pray with me? Come now, Holy Spirit, and speak to us through words that are ancient and modern. Give them new life, new relevance for our lives as we live them in these days. In your many names we pray. Amen. From the bedroom came a cry from a young boy who had actually been upstairs reading his Bible. "Mother," he shouted, "Jesus said the rich can't get into heaven." And the mother paused and then shouted upstairs, "Go back to sleep. We aren't rich." Well, the trouble this morning is we are the rich, not just those of us who live in places like New Canaan, but compared to those who travel with us on this planet around the sun, we are the rich ones. We have enough to eat. We have clean water to drink. We have adequate housing. We have good transportation. We are able to care for our children and educate them. And most of that was not true for any of Jesus' listeners in first century Palestine. Nor is that true for most people living on earth today. This Sunday is Stewardship Sunday, which means I'm supposed to ask you to give more money next year than you gave this year. You know the drill. So this year, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do something different, which you've sort of come to expect from me. This year, I'm not going to ask you to give more. I'm going to ask you to give it all. A successful businessman stood up to testify one Stewardship Sunday, and he told the story of how, when he was a young man who was very poor, he went to church one Sunday and was so moved by the sermon, no doubt, that he gave the only $10 he had to his name. And he said, "That act of faith is responsible today for all that I have." And then he sat back down, and the little old lady sitting behind him tapped him on the shoulder and said, "I dare you, do it again." Well, you heard what Jesus said in the gospel lesson this morning, so don't blame me. And it is the assigned lesson, which really means that all over this country, the churches heard that same exact lesson. And like you, millions of people are sitting there thinking, "Why didn't I sleep late this morning?" I understand that you'd probably rather be playing golf, but most of us have been Christians long enough to know that the word stewardship is simply a reminder that we are trustees, caretakers, not owners. Now, unfortunately, the church has done a very poor job with this. Not just our church, but the church with a capital C. This semester, the dean asked me to teach a course at Hartford Seminary on 21st century stewardship, and I was very dubious. As it turns out, it's the largest class I have ever taught in seminary. Apparently, many church leaders recognize that what we are doing isn't working. You see, I think the church has made the same mistake with money that we once made with human sexuality. I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, the only time the church ever talked about sex was the things that they were against. I mean, I came out of church with a definite message that sex was dirty and nasty and evil, and you ought to save it for the one you love in marriage. There you go. A strange message indeed. And the church has done the same thing with money. We never talk about it except when we want some of it from you. Almost every church in America is having a fall stewardship campaign right now. I hope this will be our last one. We preach sermons, send out letters, offer testimonies, all in an effort to get people to give more money to the budget next year than they gave this year. Well, one of the reasons we ought to stop doing that is that it simply isn't working anymore. Because stewardship is not about how much money you give to the budget. Stewardship is about who you are and how you live your whole life. Yes, the church needs money, and yes, you've got the money the church needs. But spiritually and morally, we are derelict if the church only talks about money when we need some. I'm trying to persuade churches all over this country to stop doing fall pledge campaigns and move to what I call year-round stewardship. And by that I mean that the church stops talking about money only when it needs money and begins doing whole life spiritual formation. 52 Sundays a year. Our money is our most accurate expression of our values. And so we ought to be talking about values every Sunday. The church often rails against things like greed or materialism or consumerism, our failure to protect the environment, income inequality and poverty and hunger. It may make us feel better to hear fiery sermons about those things, but it doesn't do much good because those are moral issues rooted in our unhealthy and unholy relationship with money. It might make us feel better to blame greed on Wall Street, or materialism on Madison Avenue, or poverty and income inequality on Washington. But the truth is, it's our fault. It is the fault of the church because we have failed to teach our society healthy and holy values around money. Just as too many young people learn about sex from the streets because we failed to teach them that human sexuality is a sacred gift from God, so too our whole culture has had to learn financial values from the marketplace because the church has abdicated its responsibility to teach the stewardship of all of life. Where else are people supposed to learn that the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof and all that dwell therein? Who else is supposed to teach them that all of life belongs to God? And we have been sent here to care for it, to protect it, to enjoy it along the way, and then to return it all back to the one from whom it came. Stewardship is the permeating awareness that we are caretakers, not owners. And that changes everything. There was this other evangelist named Tommy Franks, I think was his name. He tells the story of driving along one evening and picking up a hitchhiker. And they spent a couple of hours driving together. And when Tommy got to the exit where he was to pull off, he pulled over to let the hitchhiker out. And whereupon the hitchhiker pulled a gun and said, "Give me all of your money." And Tommy looked at him and said, "Son, All the money I have belongs to somebody else. And if he wants you to have it, you don't need a gun to get it. And if he doesn't want you to have it, a gun's not going to get it for you. All the money I have belongs to God. Let us pray. Someone later asked Tommy, well, what prayer did you pray, Tommy? And he said, I prayed a prayer of repentance. And the questioner looked at him and he said, no. If the hitchhiker spent all that time with me and he believed it took a gun to get me to care and express the love of God for him, then I had failed him. Now, the lesson from this story is don't pick up hitchhikers. And the other one is that all we have belongs to God. And how we deal with it reflects well or poorly on the owner. That is what stewardship means. Frankly, I don't care how much money you give to the church, because I believe that if I can persuade you to remember that all you have isn't yours, it is God's, then the church will have all it needs, and God's reign will come on earth as it is in heaven. There once lived a rich woman named Carla. She loved to saddle up one of her thoroughbreds and ride it around the border of her estate. And one morning she was riding along her stone fence and she came upon an old woman named Gertie who was sitting there eating her lunch. And Carla said, "Old lady, what are you doing?" And Gertie said, "Morning, ma'am, I'm eating my apple sandwich. Would you like some?" And she said, "Yeah, I was just sitting here giving thanks to God for it." And she said, "Gerda, my horses eat better than that. What do you have to be thankful for?" And she said, "Ma'am, I have a great deal to be thankful for. God has never yet let me go hungry. I have a family who loves me, and I have the sight to see this beautiful fall day, and hearing to listen to the music of the birds." Said Carla, turning her horse toward home. But Gertie called out, "I'm glad to see you this morning, my lady." And Carla said, "Why is that?" And Gertie said, "Well, last night I had a dream in which the Lord told me that the richest person in the valley would die today. And I'm glad to see you alive and well." "Dreams are nonsense," said Carla, turning her horse toward home. But as she rode, Carla thought about what Gerda had said. It worried her a bit because Gerda was a very devout and spiritual person. So when she got home, she suddenly noticed that she began to feel tired. And there was a tightness in her chest. She decided that she would rest for a while. She couldn't sleep, though. Old Gerda's words haunted her. Finally, she decided to just get up. And she discovered she couldn't. She was unable to rise. So in a panic, she sent her servants to call for the doctor. And upon examination, the doctor could find nothing wrong with her. Carla told him about Gerda's dream that the richest person in the valley would die before midnight. "Carla," the physician said, "you are indeed the richest person in this valley, but you are not going to die today. You are as strong as any of those thoroughbreds you are so proud of." Carla was greatly relieved, but she still couldn't sleep. So she was sitting by the fire when just before midnight, a servant came in to tell her that old Gerda had died. Death is the inevitable and irresistible reminder that we are only stewards, even of our breath. When reading your last will and testament, someone will ask, how much did they leave? And no matter how much you are worth, the answer will be everything. Jesus said that it was impossible for the rich to get into heaven. That might make people like us living in places like New Canaan nervous. But I think what Jesus was saying was the rich and the poor alike came into this world with nothing and will leave this world in the same way. And so the only way any of us will get to heaven is the richness of God's grace. Only God can make that possible. And only God can teach us to so live with what we have that we bring a little heaven